Okay, so today we're doing something a little bit different. This is Rupert, my dog. He passed away recently. Anyone who follows the more typical programming on my channel would know this at this point. And I just can't stop thinking recently about how much I'd like to tell you guys about him. And also, I know this is silly, but I'm not the only one who does it. When he passed away, when I finally had the chance to sit down and do something a little bit comforting, I went to Pokemon, and this was the one that was the newest, the one most accessible to me. And so I went out and I found a Pokemon that looked a little like him, so we could go on little adventures together. And I thought, why not just take him with me on a whole adventure, and then turn it into the video that some of you guys said you wanted to see, where I talked about him a little bit, honored him in my own creative way. So today, we are going to see if I can beat Pokemon Scarlet version with just a Fidough that I have named after my dog, Rupert. This is going to be hard. Fidough is not a great Pokemon, but I am only shooting to get to the end of the 3 main storylines. I'm not looking to beat the post-game, such as it is, though I will probably end up doing that in this video. I'll just let him evolve into a Darkspun before then. Darkspun still isn't an amazing Pokemon stats-wise, but it's significantly better than Fidough, and also it looks more like my boy, so I'm actually kind of looking forward to that. So as I tend to do in these challenges, I am playing as AJ, my second OC, or a version of her anyway. And as far as I know, at least on legitimate copies of the game anyway, there's no way to just cheat in whichever Pokemon you want to start with. So I have to start with one of the starters here, which means I have to do at least some of the game with a different Pokemon. That said, as soon as I'm able to catch a Fidough, I'm going to, and that will be the only Pokemon I use for the rest of the game, with minor exceptions. I also won't be using any items in battle, except for Pokéballs to catch the occasional Pokemon, and held items. Since it won't really matter, I go ahead and pick one of the regular starters. I go with Fuecoco, since that's the Pokemon that AJ picked in her Let's Play. Link up in the corner if you guys want to check that out. And then I did the battle with Nemona, because I have no choice but to do the battle with Nemona. At least as far as I know, you can't, sneak ahead and catch other Pokemon before you do this. I guess I could have tried that, but I'm pretty sure you can't do it, so we're just gonna ignore this. Luckily, even though the tutorial in this game is extremely long, there really isn't anything else significant that you have to do until you can catch other Pokemon. And Fidough is very early in the game. So I beat Nemona, of course, because she picks the starter that's weak to yours. And then I head down the path with her. I go through the catching tutorial, which in this game is very forgiving, but you can't skip it for some stupid reason. I meet a weird dinosaur dog thing, feed it a sandwich, and then it escorts me through a cave, which must really suck for it. Escort missions are the worst. I meet Arven at the lighthouse, learn the dinosaur dog's name, and I guess I have to battle Arven here too, which is kind of significant. But Arven's really weak at this point in the game, so I don't feel like it counts as a significant battle. You guys can disagree with me if you want. But from this point forward, I'm basically free to do whatever. So I run off, and I catch myself a Fidough, and I name it Rupert. It's level 6 at this point, and let's talk about Fidough for a second, because dang is it cute. But again, it's not an amazing Pokemon. With a base stat total of only 312, it's really, really weak. It's not Magikarp weak, but it's not great. This is going to be a struggle. Its defenses are pretty good, I guess, but its attack, its main offensive stat is just very lackluster. It's also Fairy type, which, while it has an immunity to Dragon and gives it an advantage against some Pokemon, offensively speaking, fighting types will never be a problem, for example. Poison type Pokemon are pretty common in this game, And there's a Steel-type Titan, so that really sucks. The main thing that Fidough has going for it is the fact that it learns all of the bite attacks. Psychic Fangs, Fire Fang, Thunder Fang, Ice Fang. I don't recall if you can get Psychic Fangs from the TM machine. I'm pretty sure you can before you find it out in the wild just from like unlocking it during the story. I'm not going to count on it though. I know though that Thunder Fang, Ice Fang, and Fire Fang are all available from the TM machine from the start of the game, if you can get the right resources for them. So anytime I have the opportunity to make Thunder Fang, Ice Fang, or Fire Fang TMs, I'm gonna do it, so that I can switch out between those moves depending on which battle I know is coming up next. You can also learn Stomping Tantrum, which is a pretty good answer to poison types. Trailblaze might be something worth looking into. Mud Slap comes pretty early on and isn't awful. Crunch might have some use, but primarily, the move I'm going to be using for most of this playthrough is Play Rough, which it learns at level 18. Combined with Work Up, which he learns at level 22, to offer a bit of setup, it's a pretty solid move. It's only 90% accurate, which sucks, but it's 90 damage, stab, and fairy types, again, it's pretty good. That said, there's way more tutorial to go through before I can really cut loose and start exploring this game. You're probably actually watching some of it right now. It's at this point in the game that I start the 3 main storylines, Victory Road, Starfall Street, and Path of Legends. You're forced to get all of them before you can leave Mesagoza City again after you've entered it, which is a little annoying. I kind of wish you could pick and choose which ones you want to do on a playthrough, but I do have my criticisms of this game, and that's pretty low on the list of them, frankly. As I head into the city, though, getting into a couple more battles between me and Team Star and me and Nemona, I make a point of using Auto Battle to fight as many wild Pokemon as I can, while also fighting every trainer out in the wilderness that I see. Not just because Rupert is going to need as much experience as I can give him, but because you actually get stuff in this game for beating trainers out into the wilderness. It's the way the game incentivizes you to do it. And I don't remember which one of the various gift trainers gives it to you. One of them gives you Stomping Tantrum, and I want Stomping Tantrum, so, you know. At this point, though, despite the fact that Fidough isn't particularly great, I don't have any problems. And then once I'm in the city, considering that my Pokemon is a Fidough, I don't think I really look the part of his trainer, so I run to all the various shops. I get myself set up with a new look. There, that's better. I attend my first class, I get those quests that I mentioned, and then I head out, and I head towards the first gym. I don't have a particular plan for how I want to go about this, but I do intend to take it slow, to go one step at a time and feel things out. See just how difficult this is going to be for me and my little buddy. And Rupert really was my little buddy. In fact, let's take a second while some footage plays to talk about him a little bit. He came from my aunt and uncle, who had a beagle that they always planned to breed at some point, but they never did. She was a purebred miniature beagle. And looking back, they probably didn't treat her very well, but when I was younger, I didn't really think about that much. But she lived outside, and so she had puppies. Often. And Rupert was one of them. I was given him after one of my other dogs died suddenly. I don't remember what of anymore. But it was something he should have been vaccinated against, and we're still not sure how it happened. So it was very unexpected, and I was absolutely devastated. And then Rupert came along. And from the first moment I had him, he was my dog. He had a sister, too, that I had for a little while. But she was far more energetic than he was. We ended up having to rehome her because of it. We didn't really expect her to be that energetic. Her mother wasn't. And Rupert, again, really wasn't. And I do miss her. But Rupert was mine. So if I was going to end up with either of those two dogs, I'm really glad that it was him. And he was a very good boy. Right from the beginning, he listened really well. I mean, he was a puppy. He would run and he would get into trouble. but he learned very fast. He taught himself to go in the crate when I needed him to, though we had other dogs. They might have helped teach him. He might have followed their example. And he always got along with our other dogs. One of his siblings from another litter, Daisy, and her brother, Jasper, Rupert took to them immediately. He followed their example a lot. I'm fairly certain he learned how to sit and stay and lay down entirely from them. And when we lost Jasper, God, probably a little over a year after we got Rupert? Maybe more than that? I don't even remember anymore. Something like that. Rupert was pretty devastated. Daisy was more devastated, but Rupert was pretty devastated too. He and Jasper used to play a lot. Jasper had very short legs, but he thought he could jump. Rupert could jump, though, and it was very, very cute. But the two of them got along particularly well, and that only kept up. I've had more dogs since then. He got along with all of them. But that's another story. As you've seen from the footage I've been showing, on the way to the first gym, I did do some other stuff. I explored a bit, gathered some items, mostly to sell, battled some more Pokemon in the wild, but mostly I started participating in raids. Terror raids in this game are like they were in Sword and Shield, what do they call them, max raids? They're an excellent way to get the various sizes of experience candies, which is going to help Rupert build up some early levels. In fact, by the time we get to the first gym, in this case I picked the Bug Gym, led by Gym Leader Katie. He's already level 19, which is pretty solid. And while Katie's Pokemon are pretty good, he makes short work of them. It was never really a question whether or not he was going to win this one. Katie's cute, but she's kind of a pushover. From there, I took some time to figure out how the camera in this game works, because I never actually really did that. Got a picture of me and Rupert, which I think turned out pretty good. And then I started thinking about where I wanted to go next, as well as thinking about how I wanted to handle some of the problems that I knew Rupert was going to run into as the story progressed. For example, the Team Star members in this game are actually pretty strong, and one of them is entirely poison themed. Also, I mentioned that Steel-type Titan that we're going to have to fight. And, very annoyingly, the first Team Star member, or at least the one that I usually fight first when I'm playing this, Mela, her first Pokemon is not only pretty durable physically, again, that's my best stat and it sucks, but it also has a poison-type move. So I'll head off towards and then battle against the Stony Cliff Titan, Cloth, unlocking the first ability of my Koraidon. I decide that I'm going to have to use my Terra typing defensively in this game if I'm going to beat it. Unfortunately, that's easier said than done. You don't start getting Terra Shards until you get 3-star raids, and there's going to be some opponents that I want to beat before those have popped up, which means that the best I might be able to do is getting to, what it is it Medali? Is it Medali, the town where you change your Terra type? I don't remember. I might be able to get there and beat Larry, the gym leader there, and get the free 50 normal type Terra Shards that they give out in the restaurant, where you change your Terra type, and change Rupert's Terra type to normal, which isn't awful. There is a ghost type gym leader in this game, and having a normal type would be really beneficial there. It would also remove my weakness to steel and poison, but then I'd be weak to fighting, which is a type that a fairy type should never be weak to, but I would have play rough to deal with that. Also, I could just not terrestrialize when I'm fighting against fighting types. So I think that's what I'm going to do first. I think I'm going to go as soon as I'm a high enough level that I think I can beat Larry, and I'm going to change my Terra type to normal. And I'll change it to something else later. Ideally, I think for Fidough, I would pick Ground, and maybe I'll eventually change it to Ground anyway later. But I think changing it to normal as soon as I have the opportunity is a way to go. In the meantime, though, I have a while before I'll be strong enough to fight Larry. So I head to Artizone, and I do the very cute, I think, very fun Sunflora Gym Challenge. It was very easy because I did it at night, and when you do it at night, a lot of the Sunflora are just asleep. They just hang out right by the pen asleep. And I fight Brassius, and much like Katie, he's kind of a pushover. He was a little harder, but he was never really a threat. So that's 3 of my challenges down, 2 gyms and 1 Titan. And while I don't think I'll be able to beat her yet, I'm going to try Mela next. I'm going to try to get my toes dipped in the Starfall Street storyline next. Maybe I'll pull off a miracle. I do have Mud Slap after all. Maybe the super effective damage from Mud Slap combined with the accuracy drop will be enough to save me from her Pokemon. Spoilers though, it's not. Her first Pokemon wrecks me instantly. Okay, so that's not going to happen. This, incidentally, is also where I need other Pokemon for Starfall Street. You have to bring 3 Pokemon with you into the Team Star compound. So what I did here is I just caught some weak Pokemon here before I went in. And I'll just use those same 2 Pokemon every time I go into one of these compounds. But they'll never get any stronger, so they just won't contribute to the battle. Also, it really sucked as I was clearing out the 30 Pokemon I needed to even unlock Mela. I couldn't fight any of the Torkoals, because if I fought one of the Torkoals, it would just kill Rupert, and that really sucked. But once you defeat the 30 Pokemon and unlock the Team Star leader, you can just re-challenge them instantly every time you go back, so it's not that big a deal. From there, I decided I'm going to head to the next gym, and the next easiest gym is probably Iona's gym. This means I have to fight Nemona again before I can challenge her, since I have that many gym badges. But it's a really easy fight. She terastallizes her starter, which is pretty fortunate for her, because if she didn't, it would be weak to me, but it's still no match for me. So I beat her, I participate in a live stream, and then I fight against Iona. And I expect to beat her, but I don't. Her Miss Magius wrecks me, which sucks. That means I am too low level for this too. Frankly, there's not a whole lot else I can do in the game at this point, either at this level. So I just have to get stronger. So, and unfortunately, I lost the footage of this part. I don't know how. I had to have deleted it by accident, but I have no idea how I could have even done that. But thankfully, I can summarize, and I'll probably put footage from my Let's Play in here, so you guys will still have something to look at. I went around, and I challenged some more raids. I got some more evolution candies, leveled up a little bit more, and I came back and I fought Iona again a few levels later. And by now I had both Play Rough and Work Up. And her first Pokemon, Wattrel, is not particularly impressive. It could do a little bit of damage to me, and it could get lucky and paralyze me. And I did have to reattempt a couple of times because of that. But it honestly wasn't that bad. I was able to set up against it and then sweep the rest of her team. I think it took me 3 more tries. I can't remember for sure, but it was something like that. Unfortunately, setting up will not help me against Mela, because the poison type move that her Torkoal has is one that wipes away stat changes. And it won't help me against the next thing I want to fight either. I want to fight Orthworm, the steel type Titan, next. Mostly to get it out of the way, but also because that way I'll have the high jump ability for Koraidon, which will really unlock which locations I can get to do more raids. Unfortunately though, like I said, setting up against him isn't really an option, because he has Iron Tail, and the more turns I take, the more often he's going to use it, and the more often he uses it, the more likely he is to hit me and just win the match. So I need something that does a little bit of extra damage to him. So I go and I wipe out a bunch of Houndour back in that cave that Koraidon escorted me through earlier, and I make a few Fire Fang TMs. I teach Fire Fang in the place of, I think I had Ice Fang at that point. I don't even remember, because again, I don't have the footage anymore. But yeah, and that gives me a move that's at least mostly effective against Orthworm. He's still really tanky and has a lot of health, but it's better than nothing. I also, because I've been selling everything I can't use, and that's most things, have a ton of money, so I went and I bought the Muscle Band held item, which increases my physical damage just a little bit. And between that and some luck, mostly consisting of Orthworm being stupid and only using Wrap on me instead of Iron Tail, eventually, I was able to beat Orthworm and get the second part of the Path of Titans out of the way. unlocking a bit more of Arven's backstory, and meeting his puppy, which I really like this storyline. You guys should go watch that Let's Play I plugged earlier. I definitely didn't cry at all, wink wink. From here, though, I decided I'm going to go try Mela again, because, and I entirely forgot to mention it, but it's worth mentioning. After I beat Iona, it would have been very helpful to know this before I beat her, believe me. I turned in the little mini quest for beating a bunch of the trainers in her region to the guy at the Pokemon Center, and he gave me Stomping Tantrum. So I have a pretty solid ground move now. So I go fight Mela, thinking maybe that'll help. It doesn't. Again, I don't have the footage of that, but she kicked my poor little puppy butt again. It really sucked. So at this point, I think the only option I have left is to head towards Medali and try to take on Larry. I'm a high enough level now. If I play things right, I'll be around level 40 by the time I get to him. So I have a pretty good chance of taking him down, especially considering that his first Pokemon uses sleep hacks, which I can get around with a berry, allowing me to set up a little bit. And I should just be able to sweep him. It shouldn't be that hard. Especially since once you get past Zapico, the wilderness directly beyond there has a ton of evolved wild Pokemon. You have to fight them, like in proper battles. You can't use auto battle here because they'll kick your butt if you do at this level. But as long as you're careful, you can beat pretty much everything here. At least I can with the moveset I've got. The best ones are Pyroars, because they show up pretty often in prides of 5 evolved Pyroars, and they can't do a ton of damage to you, and if you have Stomping Tantrum, you can take them down in 2 hits. And it's really great. I get a ton of experience through here. And I will show you guys some of that while I tell you more about my boy. Later on, shortly after, at my other dog, Daisy, we found out she had back problems, and we probably wouldn't have done this if we had known that before we got the process started. But my mom brought another dog home, Klaus, who you've seen in some of my videos if you've watched those particular of my videos. And he's bigger. He's bigger than both Rupert and Daisy, but he's a big, lovable, klutzy fool, and I love him a lot. And Daisy didn't for a while because we had to keep her separate from him because of her back problems until that healed, but that's a story for another day. Rupert and Klaus became best friends. Klaus would follow him everywhere. They would lay on each other. They were never apart. They would play together. It was the cutest thing. And by then, Rupert was pretty significantly older than him. How much older was he? Only like 3 years, I guess. But as they both started getting up in age, it became more and more apparent. Rupert was 15 when he passed. Klaus is 12 now. And Klaus is in excellent shape for his age. Very, very strong and athletic still. And he would try to pick little fights with Rupert and little doggy fights with Rupert. And Rupert would always be up to play with him, regardless of how he was feeling otherwise. He really loved Klaus so much. And Klaus, he's better now, but he was such a wreck after he realized Rupert wasn't coming back home. It really sucks. I don't even know if he really remembers Rupert anymore the way that a person would, but sometimes I'll see him doing something that he and Rupert used to do together, and I can't help but wonder if he knows that there's something missing. But yeah, they were great together, and I miss seeing them together. Luckily, he and Daisy have started to bond a little more than they used to since then, which is nice. I was a little worried it wouldn't happen because Daisy's been kind of indifferent to him his entire life. But, you know how it is. Anyway, we get to Medali after I do some more just general training stuff on the way. Stuff in the vein of what I've already mentioned. I also, I want to go find some of the, I can't remember what they're called, the little rock poison guys that evolve into the Champion's Ace. I want to go find some more of those if I have the chance. I beat one on the way into Medali. I want to beat some more if I can. To start getting more of their components, because Terra Blast, the thing that you make from their components, might be worth using with Rupert at some point. But we come into Wunderly, and I meet Rupert's future in the wilderness outside, and then use a Pokédoll to run away from it, even though that's technically against the rules. But I didn't want to fight it. I didn't want to risk it knocking me out either. So, you know, call me a cheater if you want. I don't even care. And thankfully, since I have done the gym test here before, I don't need to go and search around for the answers to the secret menu item that you have to order in order to initiate the gym battle. And at level 40, what was I, like level 45 or something, by the time this battle starts, I take on Larry. And unfortunately, I forgot to give myself that berry I mentioned earlier that would have allowed me to wake up from sleep immediately, so I end up losing like half my health. But even though his ace, A-Star Raptor, does get me down to 1 HP with a facade, I survive and I sweep his team. This unlocks the ability to change Terra types, which gives me those 50 free Terra shards that I mentioned earlier. So I changed my Terra type to normal, and now that I'm not weak to poison anymore, and I have a solid ground type move, I decide it's time to go beat Mela. So I go Challenger again, and I lose. And what's really unfortunate is I get past the Torkoal this time, and it's her stupid car that beats me. And literally, I just needed to withstand one more hit, and I'm pretty sure I almost did anyway. So I head out into the wilderness around her compound, and I do some more raids. And I battle some more wild Pokemon, and I level up a little bit more, and I come back, and I know I'm strong enough, and I lose again. But I knew I could do it. At this point, I just need to get lucky. I need to get a little lucky. So I come back and I challenge her again, and this time I get burned, and my attack gets cut, and I'm not strong enough to knock her out. So I challenge her again. And all this time, her stupid car has been using Screech to cut my defense, so that it could use its dumb run-you-over fire move that I can never remember what it's called. And I can never remember what it's called, because that puts me in a range where it can knock me out fast enough that she thinks she can outlast me, I guess, that her AI thinks that she can outlast me, without having to resort to Overheat, which is her other offensive move, but cuts her special attack. And thankfully, the time that I end up beating her, I get lucky, and she misses with Screech. I do big damage with Stomping Tantrum, and at this point, she can't risk screeching me again. I'll just steamroll over her, so she resorts to Overheat. But now it's not strong enough to do any noticeable damage to me, so she has to resort to the physical move, which, without Screech cutting my defense, just doesn't do anything to me hardly at all. And defeating her was, at that point, very trivial. In fact, I'm feeling so good about this victory that I think I'm going to be real stupid and take on another Team Star member next. In fact, I think I'm going to try to get the Poison-type member out of the way early, just like I got the Steel Titan out of the way early, so I don't have to worry about it later. And fortunately, my strategy here works just as well as it did against Torkoal. I Terastallized to normal to remove my weakness to Poison-type. I buy myself one turn with a Petch Berry, since, what's his name, Atticus. Atticus always uses Toxic on the first turn with his first Pokemon. Letting myself set up once, and then, even though I came out of it below health, the rest of the battle wasn't that difficult. And at this point, at least for a little while, things are just going to be a sweep. And I've known that for a while. Bombardier, the Team Star Dark Base, the Water Gym, and even Great Tusk aren't really a match for me. In fact, Bombardier was technically a 2-hit only because there's 2 stages to the fight, and I beat it with 1 hit each time. That means that at this point I'm 1 Titan away from fully unlocking the capabilities of Koraidon, so I go and I try to take on the False Dragon Titan as well, but I can't even get past the first stage of that. Dondozo is just too durable a Pokemon. I would need to set up, and I don't have time to set up. He hits really hard too. So I need to level up before I can take this on. I might even need to find some new Terra type that's resistant to his attacks. I don't know how much that would help, though. I'll have to look into it. There's still more I can do at this point, though, so I keep doing raids as I run around to do those things, leveling up quite a bit actually, eventually dropping in on Montenevera, where I challenge Rhyme. Now, unfortunately, just like with the Team Star bases, taking on Rhyme with just one Pokemon is technically impossible, since every battle at her gym is a double battle, which is extremely annoying. So just like in the early stages of those Team Star raids, I have to use another Pokemon here that I don't think will actually accomplish much. So I picked Deerling and I just used Double Kick, since all of her Pokemon are immune to it, and none of her gym trainers pose any threat to me at all. They're all super easy, barely an inconvenience. And Rhyme herself isn't much better. I wait to terastallize until I fight her, because I honestly didn't need to against her gym trainers. And her Pokemon can't really do much to me at that point. All of their best moves are Ghost type. And even though her Mimikyu can survive at least 2 hits regardless of what you do to it because of its ability, I actually leave it alive and focus on her other Pokemon, since it can do the least amount to me. Its only move that can hit me is Slash, which doesn't hit very hard even if it gets a crit. So I set up a little bit and then I just wail on her. And because of the way that this gym battle works, if I do well, the crowd keeps cheering for me, which causes my Pokemon to get even stronger. I swept her easily too, but I still don't think I'm a high enough level to take on the Titan. It's also worth noting that throughout all of this, I've been fighting Nemona here and there as well. She's also kind of a challenge at this point, more than I expected her to be, because I forgot that she terastallizes her ace, so it stops being a dark type. I think I actually mentioned that earlier in this video too, maybe. I definitely encountered it earlier in recording of this, but I just keep forgetting. Like, her other Pokemon aren't really much of a challenge to me. I can handle basically anything they can throw at me, but her starter hits pretty hard. I'm gonna have to find a way around that too. Probably Fire Fang will be enough, but still, the Nemona fight is probably the hardest fight in the pre-post-game section of this game. That was just a terrible jumble of words, but you guys know what I mean. Still, in the meantime, I have 2 more star bases. One of them I think is going to be harder than the others, despite me having a type advantage against that one. So I think I'm going to head in and try the Fairy Team Star base next. At the very least, heading to that region of the map, maybe I can make a normal type sandwich and do some training on some Chanseys or something. It's a really good place for that. Unfortunately, I'm not really strong enough at this point to take on, what's his name? Ortega, I think? I don't remember. I don't remember these guys' names. I remember what they look like. Don't remember their names. So I have to do that thing I said and go make a normal encounter power sandwich. I go with a normal encounter power 2 sandwich, which is 2 chorizo, 4 rice, and butter, which I don't know if that sounds good or not. Tell me in the comments. And I spend some time fighting some Chanseys with auto battle and with regular battle, since I have a lucky egg now that I got from La Primera. But the lucky egg only triggers if you battle outside of auto battle, so I do some of that, and I'm leveling up very quickly. And while I'm doing that, I want to tell you guys another story about real Rupert, since we have the time, and also it's a pretty good one. See, Rupert really loved kids, and I have a bunch of little nephews, and it doesn't look like my sisters are going to have any more kids at this point. My older of my 2 younger sisters might, but it's kind of uncertain. But the point is, it seems like Rupert was alive through the birth of all of my nephews, which is something that's very important to me looking back, because he loved all of them so much. Like, some dogs are indifferent to kids, some dogs only really bond with kids that are around all the time. Some dogs are outright hostile towards kids. Rupert just loved them. We would take him on vacation with us when I would tag along with one of my sisters and my mom, and he would follow the kids around and make sure they were okay in the strange house. Anytime any of the little boys came over, if he was around, because, I'd crate him sometimes. It was sometimes easier to do that. But anytime he was around, he never left them alone, but he was never rough with them. He never seemed like he was going to hurt them by, jumping up on them or anything. He would take his lead from them, let them kind of dictate how the interaction would go, and he would just follow them around and make sure they were okay, and it was the sweetest thing. I've ever seen. Literally the only thing that he seemed to care that much about was maybe his BFF Klaus, and also alcohol. He really wanted alcohol. Every time there was alcohol out anywhere, sitting anywhere in the house, he would try to get to it. Thankfully, as far as I remember, he never did. But something about it just drove him crazy. But anyway, I managed to level up off of Janzi's. I run out the clock on that encounter power, and by the time I'm done, I'm a level 75. And after purchasing a clear amulet to circumvent Ortega's copious use of the charm attack, as well as some hyper training, since I can do that now and I have the money to buy the bottle caps, I return to challenge Ortega again. So I take on Ortega again, and even though I do eat up a decent chunk of my health doing so, I'm able to beat him. It's not too difficult. A little bit of setup and then wailing on him with strong moves is enough. It takes a couple of tries, but it wasn't too hard. This does mean, though, that I actually have to fight Rupert's evolved form, and I one-shot it because of the setup I did. It was very anticlimactic. And here, from this increased level, I have enough strength to take on the False Dragon Titan, or Titans, rather, again. And again, I wear through quite a bit of my health doing so, but I'm able to take both of them down pretty easily. Tatsugiri, the second and surprisingly more difficult of the two, is actually a little easier for me, since my stab move is super effective against him. This unlocks the final power-up for Koraidon, allowing him to climb surfaces, which allows me to easily access the Psychic-type gym, and after teaching Rupert Crunch from his remembered moves, this gym is just trivial. Poor Tulip didn't stand a chance, but that's kind of been my experience with her in this game. By the time you get around to exploring her town, since it is a little difficult to reach, she's just way underleveled for you. It's why level scaling should be a thing in this game. But then, even Grosha isn't able to stand up to me at this point either, despite the fact that he's probably the toughest gym leader in the game overall. A little tiny bit of setup and a Fire Fang was really all it took. It's really, really unfortunate that while Rupert does get a decent variety of moves, he doesn't get any of the moves I've been getting from these recent victories, because all of them are really good. The point is, though, I now have all 8 gym badges and all 5 of the badges from the Path of Legends. I only have one thing left to do before I unlock the endgame content for these 3 quests, and that's defeating the final member of Team Star, Aerie, the toughest of the 5. But Aerie is a fighting type specialist, which means that she is weak to my stab move. The only problem is she has a Toxicroak and a Lucario, both of which are pretty dangerous. Lucario because it can survive a hit from my Play Rough, and Toxicroak because it has Poison Jab and won't go down to a single Stomping Tantrum. Except, looking at this battle, I realize that every single time I attack here, no matter who I attack against, I'm going to be using a move that's super effective. So I go and buy an Expert Belt, increasing my damage output by another 10% above my Muscle Band. This gives me enough attack power to defeat Toxicroak with 1 hit, and Lucario with 1 hit. Play Rough is enough for her other fighting types that don't resist me at all, which just leaves the car. And even though it has a Steel-type move, that Steel-type move cuts its speed and makes me faster. So, I battle it once to get a feel for how it's going to behave and let myself get knocked out, come back a second time, and I Terastallize to normal at just the right time so as not to take super effective damage from that Steel-type move, which I don't remember the name of it. It'll probably be in the video, so you guys can see it. I don't remember what it's called. Spin Out. It was called Spin Out, I think. Maybe. I could look it up, but I'm too lazy. Anyway, I survive it, and that slows her Pokemon down enough that I'm able to get off enough Play Roughs to knock it out, defeating this quest line as well, all except for the endgame content of the 3, obviously. Which means now I don't have anything left to do except to start that. So I head off to the endgame content that I expect to be the easiest, the battle against Arven. After entering his mom's lab and seeing a video call from her where she asked for our help, Arven decides to battle against me alongside the Mabastiff that we saved by doing the Path of Legends, to see if I'm strong enough to handle Area 0, since that's where his mom asked us to go. And this battle, despite, again, probably being the easiest bit of endgame content for these 3 quests, is still difficult. Arven uses all of the Pokemon that he caught specifically to help you take on the various Titans, as well as Mabostiff, and that gives him a pretty well-rounded team. I realized early on that I'm not going to be able to one-shot some of his Pokemon unless I'm wearing the Expert Belt. Specifically, his Garganacl is quite problematic. Its Stone Edge does a lot of damage to me regardless of where my health is at. And in order to knock it out with a single Stomping Tantrum, I need 3 turns of setup with Workup. But the best Pokemon to set up on is his first Pokemon, his Greedent, which primarily attacks with Body Slam, which can paralyze pretty often. It certainly is going to paralyze most of the time, 1 out of 3 times. And if I'm paralyzed, then I'm just too slow to win the rest of the fight. It's just never going to happen. So I have to reset and reset many times, trying to avoid being paralyzed by 3 uses of Body Slam, because I can't just give myself a Cherry Berry. I also need the Expert Belt. But finally, I do eventually get a perfect run where that happens, and immediately I'm able to one-shot his Greedent before it can attack me a 4th time. That brings me to Toedscruel. I Terrasilize to normal since it knows Sludge Bomb, and if I miss with my Play Rough attack, it's going to get one of those off, and I don't want to take super effective damage from it. Thankfully I don't, though. It goes down as well, which brings me to Garganacl, which goes down with a single Stomping Tantrum. Scovillain goes down with a single Stomping Tantrum, and that brings out Cloyster, which I expect to go down with a single use of the Thunder Fang that I taught Rupert for this battle, but it survives. And even though I survived the follow-up liquidation, I have so few hit points now at this point that I have no margin for error when fighting Mabostiff. Thankfully though, after it Terrasilizes, I managed to hit with Play Rough, winning me the battle. This took me something like 15 tries, but it was definitely worth it. The sense of satisfaction that came from it was pretty strong. And with that, the Path of Legends is complete, and I am 1/3 of the way towards, technically speaking, finishing this challenge. I'm probably going to take on Cassiopeia next. So that's what I do, and fortunately it wasn't that hard. As everybody kind of knows going into the end of this quest line, the fight against Clavel is the more difficult of the two, because even though Cassiopeia, aka Penny's, team of evolutions is diverse in type, their movesets are a little meh. The only thing I really have to worry about against her is her use of Baby Doll Eyes, a priority move that lowers your attack, which can just cripple Rupert. So I already plan to go in to battle against her with the Crystal Amulet equipped, and then I change up my moveset a little bit to better handle Clavel's typings, replacing Stomping Tantrum with Crunch in order to handle his lead Oranguru more easily. Oranguru is also the best Pokemon of his to set up against since it uses Yawn, which I can counter at least once with a berry. So I take a little bit of time to set up and then basically sweep his entire team. Like there's a chance of me losing here, but it honestly wasn't that bad. And the same was true of Cassiopeia herself. The only problem here is that I didn't have another Stomping Tantrum TM. I did have Dig, so I was able to give myself Dig. I didn't learn until after this that if you go into your Remember Moves menu, you can actually relearn moves that you taught via TM. I didn't know that. So I teach Dig here, but that's not too bad. It's for Flareon and Jolteon. The problem is I do need to do a little bit of setup here, and that means I'm not going to come into the fight against Jolteon with full HP, and Jolteon actually outspeeds me, which means if its Thunder hits, I lose. So I actually have to retry this twice before I get a run where I actually defeat her, but all in all, it wasn't terrible, and like that, the Starfall Street questline is also complete, which just leaves the Elite Four, Top Champion Geeta, and the battle against Nemona. And I expect this to be rough, and weirdly enough, I expect Geeta to be the roughest of them. Despite the fact that in terms of champions, she's probably one of the weakest in the franchise. At the very least, you can tell just by glancing at the makeup of her team and the order that she sends them out in, that she would be a lot stronger if she just changed the order of her team. If her ace, Glimmora, were placed first to set up Toxic Spikes with its Toxic Debris ability, and her King Gambit were placed last as her ace to really get the benefit from its ability, just that would make her significantly stronger. But that's beside the point. We have to get through the entire Elite Four first. And the first two of them are going to be rough. So after taking a dumb test, I head in to fight against Rika. And I have to battle her a couple of times before I can defeat her, because I do have to set up a little bit. Even though I am able to teach Ice Fang to get super effective damage on her, she hits hard enough and her Pokemon are bulky enough that it takes a couple of tries to get past her. I do learn something here, though, fighting against Rika. I always forget that Donphan has the sturdy ability, so while I did plan on going into this with the Expert Belt equipped and just going for sheer damage, that wasn't viable, since Donphan can survive a hit no matter what I do, so I go for survivability, using the leftovers instead of the Expert Belt, which actually ends up being my strategy for the entire rest of the game. Like, straight up, this becomes my go-to item for everything else going forward. Like, yeah, it means I have to set up a little more in order to do enough damage to knock these Pokemon out, but I end up with way more health after each encounter than I would have otherwise. And that carries into the battle against Poppy, where her Magnezone has Sturdy as well. What's even more annoying is that she's a Steel-type trainer, and I'm a Fairy-type Pokemon. And her Corviknight has Body Press, so if I Terrastallize to Normal-type, it can still do some pretty serious damage. But after a couple of tries, I am able to get past her. I have to set up where I can, take every opportunity I can to set up where I think I might be safe, and be patient, and take my time, and hit when I can, where I can, and eventually I am able to get through at my current level. And fortunately after this, reteaching Ice Fang in place of the Fire Fang that I taught to handle Poppy's Pokemon a little more easily, Larry and Hassel are complete pushovers to me. Both of them have Pokemon that are double weak to Ice, and Hassel, being a Dragon-type trainer, he's weak to my Fairy-type Playrough, too. I get through both of them on my first attempt, which brings me to Geeta, and just like I thought, at this level, while it's definitely possible to beat her, it's extremely time-consuming. I spent hours just recording footage of me trying to beat her. I know that a few things have to happen. Her first Pokemon is Spathra, which is not a terrible lead, because it's what's the ability called? Opportunist. It gains any stat increases that you give your Pokemon, so it's really hard to set up against. But I can set up against it once, knocking it out on the next turn with the Crunch that I temporarily replaced Playrough with, and it'll only do about half damage to me. Then I'll recover a little bit of health with leftovers, going into her second Pokemon, Kingambit. But if she uses Reflect here instead of, again, I can't remember what it's called, Luminous Crash? I think it's called Luminous Crash. Then it's a reset, because I won't be able to do enough damage to Kingambit to even begin to get past it. Then comes Kingambit, which of course is a Steel type, and it has Iron Head, which is a really solid Steel move. But I can't Terrastallize against it, because she'll bring out Avalugg next, who has Body Press, and it has just bonkers defense. So a super effective Body Press does so much damage. So I have to either flinch Kingambit or burn it to cut its attack. In order to get through it, if I don't manage to do that with my first Fire Fang, it's a reset. And then, only then, after I get past Kingambit with enough health, can I set up again against Avalugg, but probably only once. Especially only once if I only burn Kingambit. I might be able to get away with twice if I flinch it instead, because Kingambit is a 2-hit. But if Avalugg rolls high damage rolls, that's not going to happen. Because I can't let my health get too low, since her Volt and Veluza has Aqua Jet, which is of course a priority move. And I try this battle, as I said, over and over again, for hours. In fact, I threw out entire recording sessions of me sitting here for a couple hours in my free time just trying this battle over and over again. And it gets to the point where I think I'm just going to have to go get a couple more levels and maybe grind some Terra Shards so I can change my type to something that's a little more advantageous here. And then, just as I'm thinking that, I get it. I managed to burn Kingambit and move on to Avalugg with enough health that I can set up one more time, making him a 2-hit, allowing me to move on and one-shot Go-Goat. I have enough health against Veluza that it doesn't use Aqua Jet, and I'm able to one-shot it with Crunch, which brings me to Glimmora, which I know is going to be a 2-hit. and I know it has Sludge Wave, but for some reason, I forget to finally terrestrialize so that Sludge Wave isn't super effective, and it knocks me out, and I have to start all over again. But I just decided I was going to go and level up, right? But now I know it's possible, so my stubbornness kicks in, and I keep trying. And thankfully, though, this didn't end up being too big of a detriment, because just a couple tries later, I get an even better run where I flinch King Gambit instead of burning it, so I take no damage from its attacks. Move on to Avalugg with even higher health. I'm able to set up 2 more times against it, making my damage even more effective. And when Glimmora comes around, even though I do terrestrialize just in case, I'm able to knock it out with a single Stomping Tantrum. And with that, after something like 100 tries, no joke, against Gita, of all trainers, I move on to Nemona. And I haven't talked much about my battles with Nemona in this, because, frankly, none of them matter until this one. They're fun. Nemona's a cool character, I like her a lot, but this is the only battle against her that actually matters, and she knows that too. She's pretty open about that fact. And frankly, I'm worried. Her Pokemon are at minimum 3 levels higher than Gita's strongest Pokemon. Nemona's very powerful. So I go around, I get some more levels. I'm level 86 when I beat Gita. So I do some raids and I level myself up to level 90. I reteach Play Rough and I go to fight Nemona, setting up against her first Pokemon, her Lycanroc, since the best move it has against me is the low accuracy Stone Edge, and this allows me to set up enough to sweep the rest of her team, defeating her on my first try, completing the Victory Road questline as well. And now, as of this moment, technically speaking, I have beaten the game with just Rupert the Fidough. That means that per the rules I established at the start of this challenge, Rupert can evolve now into the more real-life Rupert-looking Darkspun, which is just one of the cutest frickin' Pokemon. Easily one of my favorite from the new generation, and possibly one of my favorite ever, actually, now that I think about it. But as I also said earlier on in the video, we're not done yet. I do plan to do the post-game, so after doing enough raids to get enough experience candies to level up Rupert and evolve him, I head towards Area 0. And just to see what will happen, I come in from above. I come into the 0 gate from above, because I know the cutscene has you coming in from the tunnel, and it just teleports you to the tunnel. It's really silly. This leads to the really cute cutscene where the 5 heroes of Paldea, yes, I count Koraidon as one of them, jump together down into the crater for you to make your descent down to each of the research stations, triggering the locking mechanisms in each of them and opening up the 0 lab deep below. And if anybody's played this game and for whatever reason hasn't done the post-game, you absolutely should. Because while this segment of the game is very much on rails, there's not like a lot of deviation you can take here. It's a really fun section. It's just this kind of chill walk through the absolutely beautiful environments of the Area 0 crater, while the characters who came with you, Nemona, Penny, and Arven, interact with each other and give aspects of their backstory, wrapping up parts of their story that were hinted at but that we never really got a resolution to, or telling us things about them that hadn't even been hinted at yet. And the interactions between them are just really sweet and endearing and charming, and I like the way these characters interact with each other a lot. And for my purposes, it gives me a chance to just kind of hang out with Pokemon Rupert a little bit and think about the real-life creature that he represents. Which, for the last time in this video, I just want to talk about him a little bit. I just want to, mention a few of the other random things that I remember. He always looked like he was wearing eyeliner. He was really cute and really made his eyes pop. It made him super expressive, though I think everybody sees emotion in their pets that other people wouldn't anyway, so that's probably just me. He was named by my youngest sister after Rupert Grint, because they were both redheads. And he had this really distinct dark spot on his tail that was one of his most distinctive features. In fact, I kept a lock of his fur, and I took it from that spot on his tail. I just don't want to forget about it. And I may have mentioned this earlier in the video, but he was a really good jumper. In fact, his nickname was Kangaroo Rupert, and he used to greet you, not all the time, but some of the time, when you would bend over to say hi to him by just jumping straight up like a rocket and booping his nose against yours, and it was very painful and kind of annoying sometimes. But it was also very cute and endearing because it was his thing. I've never known another dog to do that before. Not very obviously on purpose. It's just the thing that he did. He could take the better part of an hour trying to get a blanket to lay exactly the way he wanted it to so that he would lay down on it. And while he didn't bark at stuff a lot of his own accord, if one of the other dogs was barking at something, he was there for him, man. He would start barking without even knowing what he was barking at yet. It's very funny. He had this very high-pitched bark, too. Very distinctive. His sister, Daisy, has a significantly deeper bark than him. And because he was part beagle, he could howl, too, but it was kind of hard to get him to do it. It was always kind of a treat when he would. Man, I loved that dog. Anyway, once you get through all of the various research stations and enter the Zero Lab, you've already battled a few of the unique Pokemon that are found down here, the Paradox Pokemon. In this version of the game, they're Paradox Pokemon from the past. And the last battle of the game that's actually of any importance, and therefore actually of any difficulty, is the battle against the robot version of Professor Seda. Yes, this entire time she's been a robot. It's actually a very cool twist that leads to some neat emotional pathos between her and Arvin. And in that battle, she uses all Paradox Pokemon. But at this point, they're not really a threat to me. Before going into this, I replace Firefang with Crunch, so I come into the battle with Stomping Tantrum, Play Rough, Work Up, and Crunch. And even though it means I get hit by some, Low Sweep, which cuts my speed a little bit, I'm able to set up a little bit against her first Pokemon. And then I have moves that do neutral damage at worst against every single one of her Pokemon. And her ace is a Pokemon that's double weak against Play Rough, so I just sweep. Like, I guess my health got a little low by the end, but I beat her pretty easily. There is another battle after that where your Crydon fights against her Crydon, but it's more or less just a quick time event. It's cool. Very well done, I think, but more or less just a quick time event. So at this point, the game's basically over, which has got me a little sad. I always feel sad when I come to the end of a Pokemon playthrough, but I feel a little sadder than usual in particular because of the nature of what this one was. But I am incredibly thankful that I got the chance to go on this adventure with not really Rupert, but something that carried his name that I could use a little bit to cope, you know. Everybody, y'all know what this is. And my adventures with Rupert the Pokemon aren't over, of course. I can always boot up this save again and go do the, the Academy Ace tournament, or any of the other post-game content that isn't story-related, so I didn't show it here, or do raids. And I will probably move him over to either my hero save file or my main AJ save file at some point, too. And either way, I had a lot of fun doing this. It helped me work through my feelings to talk about this stuff, which is why, even though a couple times throughout the making of this video I considered not actually completing it and posting it, but I think I'd rather I did. I want you guys to come with me on this journey, not only because I'll feel better about having gone on it if you do, but because maybe the catharsis that I'm feeling here, it will help some of you guys. I don't know. We'll see. I'm very thankful that Rupert got to go on one more adventure with me, and I'm very thankful that you guys did too. More Pokemon challenges are coming. It's just this one took a very long time to make. I recorded more than 20 hours of footage for this video. But yeah, more are coming. Hopefully less emotional ones than this. But yeah, there you go. Let me know in the comments if there's any specific challenges you'd like me to undertake. Probably won't do any Nuzlocke. I don't really like Nuzlocke. But if you have any other ideas, let me know. I might modify them a little bit, but I'm open to just about anything at this point. Either way, though, until next time, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.